It's a beautiful day here in Colorado. Right now it's -4, going up to -7. So it's good to be in a nice warm place and be able to not share the cold with everybody, but it is interesting. And today is special. We're talking about LinkedIn Best Practices event. We're going to be having an event every day for the foreseeable future with experts in their field and looking for participation. This is the first event I've ever invited people to, so I had some fun doing that over the weekend. And naturally, chat's open. We depend on chat to really make us as relevant. But since we're talking about best practices, love to hear some of your best practices or what areas you'd like to share our best practices in. So the more interactive, the more fun, and the faster everything goes. With that said, I'll introduce you to my two favorite guests and long-term teammates. Kelly is here. Kelly has the awesome journey with Christy Howard. Harvey is here with the franchise show. We've kind of rebranded this the Livestream Success Network. So we're looking to bring more and more niche shows to the marketplace and really moving more B2B, more professional, and absolutely what we can all do and start doing more of together. Last year was a year to get to know each other, get to trust and like each other. I think we've got to be a lot proud of that. But now it's about let's go to work and see how much better we can do as a team. So Kelly, why don't you kick it off, bring everybody up to date, and your first thought on best practices.
Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. Happy Monday. And yeah, so best practices. This is going to be a big one. And I think our word actually was niche because I did put on my post, I'm like,
It
do you
is,
say
it
niche?
is. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get mixed
do you
up
say
between.
niche or niche? Um,
That depends where you're at, I think.
okay, I'll go with that. I'm a nicher. I say niche, not niche, which I just think is funny. They're both acceptable. Was just curious. Yeah, so this is going to be super fun. I love the change that we're going into more of an avenue of, I don't want to say necessarily training, but sharing best practices of what we've learned over the last year of doing all these live streams and all the feedback that we've gotten, and kind of where we're looking to go into 2024, which is exciting and something different, but I think helpful for so many because it doesn't matter what niche you're in, because best practices would apply across, particularly in the space of live stream. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what questions our audience is going to have too. So those are my initial opening thoughts. So I'll toss it over to you, Harvey.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're okay. It's quite cold here as well, but now it's not that cold compared with what you're saying now, Don.
Yeah.
It was -1, and I'm thinking it's quite warm now compared with what you've got. So, and
I'm
also,
not going to complain about being in the 30s.
You're
I'm
on
freezing.
Celsius or Fahrenheit differences, huh?
well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't want to worry you, Don, but you've got a spider just there.
Yeah, if you're going to get cold, we'll get spiders too.
That's it. No, again, I think I'm loving the feel of the show. You know, we've been doing these shows together now for nearly a year for me, a year for you, Kelly, and over well over that period of time for you, Don. And it's lovely to share everything that we have learned, both when we're doing these live shows and with people in a more detailed way as well, to really sort of to add even more value and to really help people do what we've done, but also a massive advantage because you can be at the stage we're at now rather than the stage we were at when we begun. You know, it's much better to learn from the mistakes of others than your own mistakes. You know, time is the most precious thing. And if there's a way in which you can buy that time back or have that time back, it's really, really valuable. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about best practices, and I love the word niche as well, or niche, whatever we're saying. niche. Yeah, but I think it's particularly relevant for me and how we developed my show, because that's exactly the basis of how it was developed. I found a niche. When you're looking at all these big numbers on LinkedIn, you're looking to try and be noticed, but be noticed by the right people in whatever it is you want to do. You know, if you want to help people, if you're a thought leader, if you're, you know, helping people mental health wise, you know, if it's a business thing, whatever it is, you want to try and reach the right audience and give value from what you're doing. And a LinkedIn Live is absolutely the most engaging way anyone can reach an audience on LinkedIn. So when I created the show, and it's the franchise show, so obviously the niche is franchising, and it took those numbers right down to competing within 250 events, and it remains the top event. And there's some huge lessons that we've all learned doing that, and just really excited to share them. But you know, niche is definitely the way to get there. So that's my opening thoughts.
Well, those are wonderful thoughts, you know, and looking back, I was here when you started here, both of you, you know, so it's like being a senior in high school and having the sophomores come in or the juniors show up, and you kind of show them around the lay of the land or how things work. And you really get gratified to see how people then do. You know, opening a door is not as much as walking through the door and continuing to walk through. And to Harvey's point and Kelly's point, learning together is so much better than learning by yourself. I mean, you're in a vacuum usually. You got your self-limiting beliefs you take with you. You don't want to consider what you're doing or have done as being wrong. But when you're in a group, it's not one person, right? If you're wrong as three people. And as if you're right by three people. And that just makes the journey more fun, more interesting. And, you know, if you do have the qualities of being teachable, of having curiosity, of being open-minded, but more importantly, becoming a winner, getting victories. And in best practices, you can get simple victories by simple things, like doing a poll, right? Takes so little time. But if you've been asking yourself a question about what you think your audience is thinking, ask them. Yeah. You know, I think what we have going, and I watch YouTube videos every day, and by now I've seen everybody, as far as if there's somebody. I might not have seen every video they've done, but I recognize all the people. And you know what I realized? They have so little hands-on experience, right? They haven't had 600 shows. They haven't had anything like that. You know, they just decided to organize like it's a business and do things in the proper manner. And I think there's value, and it beats the people who don't do that. But if you're on the ground floor talking to 40, 50 people and influencing so much more every day, how can't you be relevant? And to Harvey's point, I changed so many things because of what Harvey did, right? And Harvey could say, well, I learned so much from the Hour of Empower show, or now the Livestream Success Network. But in reality, everybody learned from each other. And because of what Harvey did, I decided every day is an event. And I'll just share with you what the events are. They just got minted yesterday. Today is LinkedIn Best Practices event. Tomorrow, we even niched it, going to niche Women Empowerment Show, because it's always Beverly. Wednesday, because of Dave, and because of Carl, made a career transition event, because Dave is helping veterans transition from military to civilian. Then back with us The live stream strategy event is Thursday. And then the Friday is the business to business LinkedIn strategy event. And these just came out this weekend. All are at the top, number one. If you want to type any of those in, they'll be number one. And they're all 200 to 300 members. So I kind of reversed engineer, if you want to know best practices. I found a group, found how many numbers were in it. And my belief is if you type in exactly what the group name is, you're going to be number one, because I think they match it up. And there's so many events in a event. I'm sure Harvey could say that too in the franchising department. If there's 230, as you tail off, you're getting a lot of mixture that isn't as pure as the first 20 or 30. But here's the key. So what does it mean to be number one? Unless someone sees it. And I think the next big step as far as strategy and best practices is promotion, right? Because once you got the showdown pat, and once you got your target audience and your event, how do you get more people to come to see it? And I think that's really one of the big things. So let me just share that we've got Carl, who's in the collaboration group. I see his newsletter every day. I know you're up to 497. I even count those. Can't wait to see you get to 500. Carl's ready to launch his show. And hopefully what me and Kelly and Harvey are learning, Carl doesn't have to learn the same way. We can just pass it on. And hopefully what we're going to do is create this for more people, because I think we all believe we can do more with and through people than we can as individuals, right? So instead of trying to master everything we learned, why not just share where we are, but more importantly, embrace people to come in and learn with us, team up with us, and duplicate our success. So Dennis is here. Today must be a joyous day for Dennis because he's in the heating and air conditioning business. And I know when it gets cold, people want their heat. Nice to see you to warm me up today. This was a weekend without you. Great to be here. As B2B, let's all do best practice about savingheat.com. That's Dennis's business. Is still practicing to be the best and pass the test after just 49 years. Cheers. Well, congratulations to you, Dennis, because obviously you found a niche, and over 49 years were able to reinvent yourself, stay relevant, keep in business, pay people. That's quite a job just keeping alive, let alone prospering. So good to see you. Beverly is here. Good morning. It seems I have a problem on my computer, but I just got in. Every day I do this, it is never problem free for something, somebody, or some time, So anyways, great crowd. And, I love about the crowd, these are our collaborators. Over time, the non-interested or involved kind of found a better place or a different place. And the best of the best became the core. So Kelly?
Yeah, I was, as you were saying all that, and maybe something before I do take over, is I think that there may be some confusion because you were talking about events and groups that you are doing. So did you create a group for each of these events?
No, I just created an event.
Clarify, because I thought, if I'm a little bit confused, I would imagine that maybe the audience.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So exciting for so many reasons, because I completely agree. Finding other people who have already done it. Granted, yeah, you can go on YouTube and get a few videos and watch, but I think it's all the quirky things that each platform has, and figuring out how to do that, and it just speeds up the process. And I used to honestly think, niche, which is funny you say niche, I say niche, and I guess three ways, because it's niche, or I don't know, you said it a different way, Harvey, and then niche.
We're going to start doing the potato, tomato.
Yes. Because I used to feel that in my marketing career, or the majority of it was in financial services, specifically capital markets and private equity. And then I was known as expert in broker-dealer communication. And And that was something for me that I was like, oh man, have I niched myself too much? Um, and of course, but marketing, it applies to any widget. So, that skill set, but a lot of people aren't looking necessarily for broker dealer communications experts, but those who are, there aren't very many. And that's how I was sought after for a long period of time because there weren't many people that do what I did or understood the complexity because of all the compliance and legal involvement with it. So I think sometimes people can feel like, oh, my niche is too narrow and I might be missing opportunity. And or think I'm just going to cast my net so wide. Um, but that can actually work against you because of it's casting too wide. And I think, Don, you say this an awful lot, is you would rather have, and it's quality over quantity. Who are really your target market in your niche? And understanding that. And a lot of times it is talking through it. We went through the exercise as an example last week with Samuel, who works in sustainable waste management globally. And he's looking to do a show. And during our group, we're going over, well, if you do sustainability, and I can't remember how many thousands of events there were, but then when we kept drilling down and got it to waste management, there was only like 100 and something that were in the event space. So it is just about figuring out who do I want to target in this event space, because you can always broaden later. I think it's just people are afraid to niche too much. Ooh, I just said niche too much because I think they're afraid of missing opportunity. But I also think if you're not sure, do cast it out and see how your audience responds and then start niching it in that direction. Because I also have seen and have had clients who believe that their target market is a certain niche and they're wrong. Because it's like, nope, you thought your product was made for this group of people, but really that's not who it's resonating with. It's resonating with this other group. So I still think you've got to be open to being flexible and adaptable. But once you find it, go with it. I mean, we say this all the time. There's 1 billion people on LinkedIn. You don't have to worry about competition. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts right at the moment.
I think they're terrific. I really do, because when we're talking about niching, we're talking about having people pre-qualify themselves. Yeah. Right? So why not have them sort before they come to you or in the door, and then you have to unsort, because the choice is either going for quality, relevant individuals or going beyond that niche and extending it and get half of the population who isn't that. Then now you have to feel comfortable. You're going to be able to sell them, sway them, move them. And that's too much work for the second half when you have the first half. The other thing I've figured out is alignment is so important. So when you're requesting or asking for certain people, right, it's easier then to also invite those people within that group. Yeah. So if it's women's empowerment, what I did, and this is where a larger followership, if you want to call that, comes in. You can only invite up to 1,000 people, and they have to be first connections. Yeah. Right? So if you have 37,000, it's easy to say women's empowerment against 37,000 and you get 200. If you want to go into B2B, all you have to do is business to business against the 37,000. And you'll get these first connections. And the beauty of it is every day you can send 200 to 5 events, but they're all 5 different populations. Right? Yeah. So the women's empowerment list won't be the same as the best practices. And I think that's key. So, when you can model it that as this moves, that moves with it, where you're not doing extra work or it's not as aligned. So Harvey, you've been the master at starting off with the event promotion and getting to number one, and really just identifying that something like that is out there that most people don't know.
Yeah, I think so many things you both said there are resonating with me. I think when you were talking, Don, about how to promote, and we just started there to talk about how many invites you can send out and so on. You're absolutely right. You can send out 1,000, and there are different techniques as to how you've got 37,000 connections. So like you say, it's likely if you do a search amongst your first stage connections, you're going to find some relevant audience within that. Now, I haven't got anywhere near that amount of connections, but so that the way to find and build a relevant audience for any kind of purpose or any kind of show you want to do, the first thing you do is to start to build that. The place where you can start to build that is other events. So search the events, find an event, register for the event. You've got an engage and look at who's there on the event as well. You're going to pin it right down to the people who are in the industry, who are engaged, who have registered for an event and who have attended an event. So you could do that with 20 different events and appeal to that already niched audience. So I like that. I think the other thing, and these are potentially new things for me to look at as well. So I've got one event a week, so I can use all 1,000 of those invitations. LinkedIn will, at a charge, promote an event. Now, I haven't looked into this yet, but it's going to be an interesting thing to share on future episodes as to what that means. But that's one way to do it. Another thing to look at. So if you've started to build a really good community, you're engaged with them, you're messaging them, you've met with them, you've had a Zoom call with them, and they're in your industry. And let's talk franchising now, because it's the world I know. Right? And another thing I'm looking at doing is building a little collaboration group between those people for the purpose of event invitations. So if you get one person who can invite 1,000 people to an event, if you get 10 people, you can invite 10,000. And if each of those 10 people are within the same community or a similar community, they're still going to have relevant first connections.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way to potentially increase and promote the event. The other thing that I was really interested in what you were saying there, Don, is just about niching down to that kind of core audience.
Yeah.
And you've got three things that start to niche that down. You've got who you invite, who you choose to invite. And you've got to be careful to keep that. It's very easy to think to yourself, I'll invite that person because they've come before, or because I know them, or because I know that they're going to attend, and it clicks up that. But you want to really be strict with yourself and keep it to the audience you think is going to get the value and that you're going to build from. So you've got 1,000 invites. Now, I've spoken to people, and it's industry standard or LinkedIn standard for between 10 and 12% of those 1,000 to register to attend. So you've got between 100 and 120 registered. I managed to get that to about 160 to 200 generally, so between 16 and 20%. And then you've got two things that are really relevant from there. You've got the people who comment, and you know they're there, and you know they're engaged and interested. And then you've got the people you don't know are there as well, the people that message me and say that was a great show, and I've never heard one little thing from them. So it can appeal to people you don't even know are there. So I'm loving the chat, but I'll hand it back over to you, Don, and to recognize this lovely individual.
Yeah, we got too many people not to recognize them. Beverly's having issues not seeing the comments. A lot of times I would log off, log on. I would refresh my browser. Anything starting you're never going to, you'll learn that it isn't that issue at the minimum. Dennis comes back with agree the best of the best, passed the test, and aren't a pest. Leslie's here. Welcome, Leslie. Leslie promotes all our shows. Thank
Yes.
you. Morning, Kelly, Harvey, and Donald. Beverly comes back with, I agree with you, Kelly, the smaller the niche, the better. I can help everyone, but in my programs, women over 50 who've had that wake-up call. And then what? There's enough, like Kelly says, out of a billion and out of whatever you have. And why not? If that's where you want to be, that's where everybody should go to. Don't just start changing because there's a demand here and you say, I can wear that hat, because you'll get out of alignment. Agree, help your power ship stay afloat is a great note. Leslie sees our hats. I think we made that a trademark for us. Agree, build a group of good connections and it won't be shocking. Leslie's excellent topic. Thank you so much, Leslie. And Beverly comes back, very valuable. Harvey, thank you. Well, you know, I'm a numbers guy. I love numbers. And, you know, when I think of it, I thought of the same thing. And now here's another twist, because once you open a door, there's so much more than what you thought when you looked at the handle. You know, now finding somebody with 50, 80,000 connections makes sense, right? Because they'll find 1,000 easily, especially if they're aligned to your industry. So, you know, if you have 2 guests on and we create a protocol that everybody can invite whoever they want, doesn't have to be 1,000, 100 is plenty if you get your best 100 in, right? And now all of a sudden you got 3 people at 100 or 200. And as one person doing 5 shows, I can only do up to 200 a show. But 2 guests can do 2,000 a show at 1,000 each. So if you start combining that and doing that by plan and actually making that part of the expectation, right? If you're going to be on a show, get in front of it, promote it. If you're not proud of it, if you're embarrassed to share it with your followers, don't come on, right? Yeah. So either get on or think about getting on, but don't get on and not do something. And I think that's where awareness, top of mind awareness comes in, because you know what? The person, and that's why we have a network. You could actually divide 37,000 into 200 groups and you'd have 1,000 different groups with 200 people, give or take, right? That's a little bit of an exaggeration. But it means you could create 50 shows in this network at different times that were niched just for that person. And I think this folds into what we're trying to do is have a training program, hands-on, have a collaboration group where we have these conversations around a table with people who are actually doing it. And I think everything will change because a lot of people here are in the waiting room, right? And they should be on the field. And it's just a matter of crossing over, I think. But anyways, before I swing it back, okay, Dennis says, okay, trying to get here. Leslie comes back with people often agree to do the promoting, and I've discovered that very few actually keep their word, unfortunately. Well, that's true, and that's why they shouldn't qualify. I'd rather have the same people with great information. Give you an example. Oh, just today, I forgot his name already, but I shouldn't. Julian was on the show, had a great show with another individual. And I just got a message from Julian, said, love the show so much, can't wait to come back. And now he's coming back on the 2nd. So some people have stories you want to continue to have them tell, that they've already made an impact and an influence on the audience. You know, a new face, you know, if you go to a doctor and every time it's a new person, you don't connect too much knowing the next person's going to be another stranger, right? Mm-hmm. If you let the audience vote by their participation and also by the host experience, then you just plug right into that. You know, and it saves just inviting anybody with a story as being separate. And I think that's the key, is if you're really doing people a favor that they don't fully understand or appreciate when they get on a show or they get their own show. And the best thing they can do is be part of someone's success before they can be part of their own success, right? To do it hands on. So with that, Kelly, you've done so much on your show, finding so many interesting people, and we've all learned things we thought were good practices. We talk about best practices. I can guarantee I've had some of the worst practices, but it only took one time or two to make me aware of it. So, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, so many things in what you both just said. Yeah, and I will say the Awesome Journey, as an example, it is kind of an exception to the rule in the sense it's not niche, other than the fact of it's focused on mental health, which really applies to everyone, and it's inspirational, motivational stories that provide hope, and then bringing topics that maybe people aren't familiar with because they're topics that aren't talked about. And there's a lot of support for first responders and veterans. However, I will be starting a marketing podcast, which will niche, which I'm excited about. But one of the things that came up while you all were talking, and I did take a couple notes so I didn't forget, but I have a designer that I do work with, and he wants to start a live stream with someone else that he works with. And he's not really sure, or they're not sure, oh, what topics should we talk about the first few episodes? And I'm like, well, if you're stuck on what to do, that's what your network is for. Start some polls, put some polls out to your network and ask those questions. And then, of course, add the proper hashtags or share in groups. Because I think that's another thing that people forget is when you make a post, up on your, there's a drop down up at the top by your picture when you're making a post that says anyone can see it. Or if you click on that, you can select a group. So you can even further niche it to a group that applies to your topic and share that. And like Leslie, I'll use her as an example because I appreciate that she does her sheet every week and that we're on it every week. I mean, it's so appreciative and it's so helpful, but she shares it in multiple groups. And to share someone else's post, particularly when you're named on something like that, I mean, how long does that take you? 2 seconds. You can either repost it with no comment or you can repost with your thoughts, which I usually try to do. If I don't have time and I just want to be sure I don't forget to repost, I'll do a repost. Because I think when people are your guests and come on your show, that should be something that you talk about right up front. Hey, we'll do a pre-promotion or what we'll be doing, but we expect you to do that as well. Share with your network, invite, and this is how you go to the event and click on the share, and you can invite your network. A lot of things that Christy and I do is when we do get new connections or if we reach out to somebody who we think may be a potential guest or just an interest, we include on a connection request a little note about our show. And, hey, feel free to check it out. Or if it's somebody that we think we're interested in having a guest, we'll send them a link to one of the shows that probably, not probably, but that would be relatable to them. Here's an example of what we do. Please let us know if this is an interest and we'd love to set up a conversation. But we never promise anybody like, hey, you're going to definitely be on our show. Although I can say we've had 0 ever say no, which is great. But there's all these different components of what you can do. And I think when you're starting, it can feel overwhelming because it's like, oh my gosh, you're talking about pre-promotion. You're talking about an event. You're talking about a third-party tool. Do I use StreamYard? Do I use Restream? Or there's a new one, Riverside? I think that's the one. And post-promotion. And I mean, there's so many things because I will say learning over time too with our guests is what is the guest experience? You've got to send them an invite to get it on their calendar, show them how they can invite people from their network, doing post-promotion. What do you want your post-promotion to look like? Pinning them in your, either at the top of your profile and or in your featured post so that when people come to your profile, they can see, oh my gosh, look at what they're doing. So I think those were all the ones. I think there was a couple other things that you were saying, Harvey, that I wanted to expand upon, but I think I forgot. But I do think that one of a good takeaway is the polls. If you're not sure what topics to get into, or even what guests, ask your audience. I think that's the best way. Don't let it stall you because you're not really sure. And then I also say, don't worry if nobody shows up the first time either. And the other thing I did want to comment on is the comments on LinkedIn. This is an ongoing deal. And it's been, I think, especially heightened the last month, where a lot of things aren't showing the way that they should. And because being an audience member, there's times, one, where I can't comment, especially if I'm on my phone, or two, I'm commenting and I can only see my comments and I can't see anybody else's comments. So there's all kinds of layers of things, because, and we've all been there when it's like, how come we're not getting any comments? We've been talking already for 30 minutes. And it's like, because there's something wrong. It's not that nobody was there. But again, that's why best practices and talking with people who have been doing it. And so that's where I'm at right now.
I think those are beautiful points and very valuable. And what listening to it is, let's say, a novice, it sounds like there's a lot of stuff to deal with. We take it off our tongue like it's 1, 2, 3 because it is. We live it, we think it, and we do it every day. And that's why I think having a program, having a group to come in and get context.
Yes.
Because the problem is you'll get excitement, but without knowledge, without experience, you get back to lost and get into frustration, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to kind of walk through it, the big picture when you get started. Like, here's what you do, here's where it could lead, blah, blah, blah. I think the other key is people respect more of what you do if they see you're very conscientious in how you do it. Right? If someone says, hey, this is a beautiful carpet, you need to take your shoes off at the door, and people appreciate that because maybe they're not thinking and you appreciate it, but it also shows, is this a workable, teachable person I have here? Mm-hmm. Because I do see a lot of times with people on LinkedIn is they bring an entitlement to the platform that they used to own or have, a big shot C-level person or a person has a ton of money and they just walk in like all they got to do is buy what they need or take what they want. And it's a humbling experience. And you got, like any school, you got to start. It's like a new language, actually, because it is a new language. The terms, the situations, you have to have some familiarity with the vernacular. And I think being with a guide is so essential to really achieving significant success. And that's one thing people have to ask themselves, what am I here for? Just to have a good time, spend time with nice people, you're already there. You can find enough shows, enough content that it'll make you happy and fulfilled. But what I see is creating templates, duplicatable templates that we have engineered and have success. Looking at the numbers, this show is blowing away everything in the last month so far already, just because of something I must have done. And to Kelly's point and Harvey's point and my point, there's all these rickety-rackety things going on. But it's still relative that if you got 10 people in a rickety-rackety thing and you go to 30, it's still rickety-rackety, but you tripled it, right? Mm-hmm. So you went against the wind, but you're starting to see success. And I think that's really the key. Switching back to, here we go. Leslie has a large one. I have created a simple written sequential checklist for new clients. Last quarter, a client wanted to do 12 lives in 12 weeks of novice. She followed the checklist. Well, people respect what they expect you to inspect. That was a common retail thing, right? So if you went to visit a store and you didn't check on what was going on, probably next time it wasn't going on as well. Harvey.
Yeah, I think all of that was really valid. There was one thing that I was thinking that I don't know if everybody does as well, and it's a little bit of promotion as well. So on LinkedIn, on your home page, you have a section called activity, and I didn't know until fairly recently that you can change on that activity section what shows on there. So because I changed it so that a newsletter showed on there, so when people go to your what is like your own personal website, when they look at your profile and they scroll down and they get to that activity, normally I think it's preset for posts, whatever your recent post is.
Mhm.
I changed mine to newsletter because it was I wanted that to show there, but you can also change it to events that show there as a preset thing. So there's just so many little niches that
Well done.
intricacies. Yeah, thank you. That promoting a LinkedIn Live and a live streaming show, there's so much involved in it, and it can be simple, and it is simple if it's done in the right way and in the right order, and using all the tools at your disposal. I think one thing that you said, Kelly, there, or you touched on a while ago, is about either niching down too much or even going the other way and making something kind of too wide, I suppose, is the other danger. I've worked with a lot of companies that if you ask them what was their target market, they would say everybody. We
Right.
want
No,
to
they're not.
market it to everybody.
Wrong answer.
I watched a film the other day called Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it just reminded me that film that's sometimes the way that some companies want to do it. So you've got to find your niche, and I agree with what you said, Kelly, that you could miss your actual niche if you're too blinkered in thinking this is the group of people that we want to market to, or appeal to, or add value to, when actually it's a completely. So I think certainly at the beginning, and maybe as you go along, you've got to be prepared to be flexible.
Always.
Or maybe try several niches at the same time.
Yes.
Have some KPIs as to whether it's effective and it's the right one, but be
That's
prepared to quickly change up that, I think, is what I would say.
Yeah,
Agreed.
Kelly, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I absolutely agree. I mean, and not to get in too far away from what we're talking about, because I think sometimes, like you said, for us, this is all like normal conversation, and it can sound like a lot. But yeah, and I mean, that is what I said a bit back, is about being adaptable and flexible. That is what data is for. And that is why, somebody like me and Dawn and Harvey, I know you guys are too, are data geeks, is because you've got to test things. And, A/B testing is obviously huge in marketing. But yeah, don't be afraid to try something new, because you never know. Give it a whirl. Yeah, and it's got to be, what is your goal? Where are you going? Because even after doing, the awesome journey for not quite a year yet, it will be in April, which is so hard to believe. We're starting to think of different things, because, the goal in the beginning was just to add some light into the week for everybody because there was so much negativity. And same with the Hour of Empower. But now, a year later, we're looking at things a little bit different, and like, hey, we got to shake things up a little bit and shift to have it grow, or to have new goals, because your goals shouldn't, and then generally over time, aren't the same. They do shift, and so you have to adjust your strategy for that. So I think it's always important, obviously, to A/B test everything, because you never know. But that is what data is for. And a lot of people hate data. I mean, I love it and I nerd out over it. But that stuff matters. And that's how you know, are you hitting in the right area? And that's how you know how to adjust your goals and shift accordingly, because you can be wrong sometimes. And I know I've used this example before with other clients that were absolutely convinced that this one area was their target. And then they were wrong because they wanted it to be that. That's how they envisioned it. But it wasn't received in the market that way. And it wasn't until we did some A/B testing to be able to show them numbers, to be like, hey guys, here's proof to you, because sometimes people need that data to back it up because they'll think their opinion is the correct opinion. Or we can think that. We can be like, oh, well, it's totally working. Like our strategy is killing it. Well, how do you know that? You have to look at the numbers and the data. And same with what your goals are with a live stream. And there are quite a few data points that you can get. You know, like Don was just saying, he looks at them during the show, which is great. But that's how you can tell, oh, this topic did so great. We got so many more hours of viewership as opposed to this topic that I actually thought was going to do great. What did we do different on this one as opposed to this other one? Because a lot of times it's when you add in those additional steps, you know, like post promotions, making video shorts from your lives, which is another great takeaway, is don't add things to your strategy or your process until you can absorb it and be consistent with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's wildly, wildly important because inconsistency confuses your audience, period. And you can think like, oh, it's no big deal because I haven't done a post in 3 weeks, but I'm going to start a new event. Well, it is confusing because consistency is for the win always. So those are my thoughts right now.
I think those are terrific thoughts because as you were saying them, I was 100% in agreement. And what I realize is that we talk about best practices, but, you know, that word can move to best disciplines, best attributes, right? If an attribute is being consistent, it really doesn't matter. You know, we're not talking about 1 step to 2 steps. We're just saying be consistent. You know, don't confuse people. I mean, that's what we have to understand is we're reaching out to strangers or people that know us as a connection but don't really know us. You know, how do you build trust? How do you build that relationship? Because you can build on what you're building. You don't have to go out find new every day. And that's silly. The other thing is, how do you repurpose? How do you put people to work? And I think we've got an obligation if we bring people on the show or we bring people into our group is to give them the best chance of success possible. And the best chance of success is teaching them how to help themselves, right? What do they do after the show? I know Beverly's always commenting on anybody on the show. And why wouldn't you?
Oh.
You know, if someone mentioned your name or mentioned a comment because of what you said, it'd be counterintuitive and productive to not recognize them, reach out to them. I'll give you an example. Had Mary Gardner on, was a big hit, lovely lady. I've known her for a few years. And just like think Thursday, this Dr. Deborah, I'll remember her name, said that Mary just recommended that I get to know you and about your show. And then I saw that Mary recommended her, and she's, you know, done a TEDx, and she's probably watching the show because I saw she registered for it. And actually, Dr. Deborah, I'll mention it. Dupree, that's it. I wanted to make sure I didn't screw it up. But the point is, she's on Tomorrow with Beverly, right? And it was so easy to say, okay, if Mary recommended you, I see what, and I sent her a little bit of context. And, you know, watching a show always helps. But the point is really taking advantage of referrals, encouraging people to self-promote themselves to, you know, because if they get real successful just by the experience, and I know Kelly's always made the point is if you see a new person, and if you took a snapshot of where they were when the show started to where they are when the show finishes, it's almost like somebody just got their medals coming back from something. It's, you know, they feel like they overcame a fear, which is usually talking in live audiences or just talking in general. Or it's like, hey, this is something that could work. But, you know, all the revelations I learned this weekend was because I did it myself this weekend, right? If I just would have depended on somebody's advice, I wouldn't understood the integrations or the complexities or the benefits. And now I got a whole range of numbers and situations that you can move around. And I think what bodes well for Harvey is he's the James Bond of the group. You know, he's Mr. Intrigue and Adventure. And, you know, once you're on the hunt, I think that drives you. You know, I mean, just when you're in the game, yeah, you're gonna have to pull up with your Aston Martin one day, Harvey, and make all
Oh,
the
yes.
Exactly.
so
Yes.
let's see. The comments are a little slow here. Harvey, what thoughts would you like to bring to the table? I mean, this is 50 minutes and we're just scratching the scratch of even thinking about best practices.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, it's thankfully a topic that we can keep talking about, and we will. And you're right, we've only just scratched the surface. You know, pretty much every little thing that we've said could warrant a 50-minute conversation, and any on and off there. I like what you said, Kelly, about the measure. We were talking there about the measure of success, both in your LinkedIn Live, but in what everybody is on the platform to achieve something, even if that's just kindness to other people or to, you know, meet new connections, whatever. It doesn't have to be a monetary or a business goal, but everybody is generally on here to achieve something. So there needs to be a measure of success for that. And it's really interesting in terms of LinkedIn Lives, how you measure that success. You know, I think it's really measured ultimately when you know, if you're in franchising, it's measured when you get all the way through that to somebody doing some business with you, because we're here on a business platform, perhaps, you know, or if your goal is something else, you know, it's measured that way. But LinkedIn provide a huge amount of different analytics, and you can look at them, and it does give you a good idea as to how much people. One of the questions I think people ask is, or you ask yourself when you do these things, is, am I adding value? Are people enjoying what I'm doing? And I think when you look at the analytics of the show and you can see how many minutes it's being watched, at least, or if the comments are good and lengthy and interesting like they always are here, then that's a good measure of the success. You know, if 20 engaged people have been on there and the vast majority have been on there for most of the time that the show's been on, then that's great, because that doesn't even include the ones that aren't on there. I also agree with what you said, Kelly, there about not doing anything unless you can be consistent. You know, I've definitely made that mistake before, you know, but experiment with it, don't you? You know, experiment, you see how effective it is, what if it's useful, if you can build that into your day and the time frames, and if you can and it's effective and it's valuable, then you put the effort into making that a consistent thing. But yeah, I think consistency is key. People like to know things are on at the same time, or, you know, the same. People find it comfortable, I think. You know, they come to sort of expect that, I guess. Someone did quite an interesting comment there. Someone called Brittany Pepper. You see that one? Yeah, that's quite an interesting question or point to raise. A jack of all trades or a master of one, and Niche reminds Brittany of that. I think so too. Yeah. I think I've always myself been a jack of all trades more than a master of one. I think I have to concentrate hard to maintain focus on one thing. My mind is constantly thinking of the next thing, before, or 20 things. And I know Leslie would be telling me off right now for this, telling me to have purpose. But
Hey, Harvey, what time is it?
well, you know what? I was thinking of not doing it. Now I don't know how controversial this is, but
Well, I'll interrupt just for a second. What I was thinking is, I asked myself, why won't I do something new versus the other question? It's almost like I want to change. I want something new. I want to mix it up.
Oh,
So why not open up? Like this week, I went to 5 days a week. This week, I changed the branding. This week, I created 5 events. This week,
yeah.
I invited people to events. And, you're doing 7, 8, 9 changes. And whatever you've done for so long, you've done for so long. And, when you're getting tired, the people around you start getting tired of it. So you have to mix it up for the audience and everybody else. So Harvey, want to get right back to you.
I was only joking, by the way.
I was going to say, to Don's point, that I think it's so important, making changes does keep your audience engaged, because you need to do a little reset every once in a while, because it's just like, when people do speaking, webinars, whatever you want to call them, workshops, after 10 minutes, and if not a little bit before, you should always do something that either changes a cadence, does something a little bit different to re-engage your audience's brain. It's just a fact. But consistency, and there's an excitement about what people expect. I mean, that would be like I feel like Harvey and his props is kind of like, wow, I'm going super old school, and this is even kind of before my time, but I loved it on replays, is you always expected Johnny Carson to do Karnak. And if he didn't do it, you were kind of bummed.
Well, you know what? As I say, I was only joking. I have got one, but the thing is, though, as I've said in recent weeks, I'm not planning them. I used to.
Yeah, I love that.
So, this time I'm trying to think of them as we're going, because I find it interesting. And there's 2 reasons why I'm going to pick this one. The prop is, I won't be able to take it off, it won't come off, but here's my wedding ring here. Okay. And the reason that I'm going to pick my wedding ring, and when you look at the live stream success network, that shaking hands there, it reminded me, is because I was sitting with my wife a few weeks ago, and we were holding hands on the sofa. And when I looked at her hand and my hand together, it reminded me of how rare that is, right? So the chance of being born is rare enough. The chance of meeting the love of your life is rare enough. So that holding hands together like that is so incredibly rare. So the reason I picked this is it reminded me of when we're dealing with all of these big numbers on LinkedIn, and we're trying to get down to one or a few special things, or in this case, one special thing. But it just reminded me that you can take things from a large number to a small number, and that those things do happen. And so today it's my wedding.
Love that.
Yeah, I think that's so important, because to stay professional, you still have to be personal in a professional way, right? People want to know that you're more than numbers or charts, that you really have a heart, you have a soul, you're kind. And a lot of times I think we're kind of like ambassadors. Like if you've ever been to an airport, they always got an ambassador there to show you where the gates are, or to tell you, just to point you in the right direction. And we do point people in the right direction when they bring their questions to us. We open this forum, to everybody and anybody. I think to Harvey's point and what Kelly was saying, at a certain point, you come into to LinkedIn and LinkedIn Live, and your thoughts are more is more. And that switches to less is more when you do more with the less, right? So would you rather do more business with less people or less business with more people? And I'd rather do more with less because it's easier to build bigger on what you're already built on and have a foundation. And again, everything duplicates. What's good for you is good for people like you coming up, right? So
Mhm.
you got to think, hey, this might be my favorite, but is this the best way for the general population or somebody coming in? And that's why you take yourself out of it and make it about it. And you know, once you get to a solid core, and I think we all start with on LinkedIn with the hub, you know, and it's up to us to build the spokes. And if you can keep adding spokes to your hub, you're going to continue to build value. Christy's here. Christy's just great. A cohort of Kelly's on the awesome journey. I love newness and change. It's where I grow. You know, in the old days, we're going to talk about old days and we're past our time. Department stores, which are rare now, used to have window dressers, they used to call them. And they go in and change every month or two the window. So Christmas, they'd have the Christmas look, and Easter, they'd have the Easter look. And I think that's what we need to continue to do. Christine says, this is a great topic, but now I'm more confused than ever. I'm a subject matter expert, but I suffer from what Harvey says of wanting to do millions of things outside my line. It's a discipline to pull yourself back from jumping into something that looks so much fun and interesting and not knowing what it's like buying a horse and not realizing
Yeah.
someone's going to feed it, you know, and someone's got to find a stable for it. Brittany comes back with, there is a balance, I believe, knowing where to wear certain hats and what it looks like to be a personal and professional. You get a lot more daring with change when you got supporters around you who
Oh,
support
yeah.
change. You know, so if someone keeps saying go for it, you can always say it's your fault. You know, you were too much of a fan of it. But with that said, final words, Kelly. An hour goes by so quick, especially if we focus on an area and not just a word.
I know that went by super fast. And yes, happy birthday week, Christy. And then speaking of niche, because I said, you know, out of the awesome journey, I'll be niching into a marketing podcast. Christy's also niching into an administrative assistant podcast that will be coming out. So definitely watch for those. Yeah, and Christine, I'm with you. I'm the same as Harvey. I always have like 10 million things going on in my head, and it's about drilling it down to the things that I actually need to do. But I think as we move forward, is about reminding everyone, hey, send us questions. We're happy to address them. Whatever confused you or left you going, I have more questions about this, feel free to send it to us because we're happy to address them next time because we are, you know, building this as we go and your input definitely matters to how we're going to, like we said earlier, is how we're going to adapt and be flexible and where we go with the conversation. And I will end since we are talking about best practices and basically, you know, marketing and live streaming. Stop the pitch slap people and get back to the basics. Create a relationship and do true connection because that's where success begins.
I'm there with you, Kelly. Harvey?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I think it's a great way to end. I think also I like what you said about if people here are interested in a particular element of this, then
Yeah.
you know, put a question there, and you know, where answer it and share our experiences with it. I because it's a big area and there's lots of niche, there's lots of detail in there that you have to get right or can be different depending on what you're trying to achieve. And we've all got our unique experiences of that, of which we're looking to share with people. And it's a great platform to do it. I also agree with what you said there, Kelly, about truly engaging. And a lot of people really still don't understand. I don't think when people send out the pitch slap that they understand what it's doing. And I think in the same way, I don't think that they understand how they can use the platform to create true value and real engagement. And with a LinkedIn Live and doing it the right way, you can really start to grow really good relationships off and on of LinkedIn and have true engagement. And people will want to come to you for whatever value you're bringing to them. You know, focus on the value you're bringing and putting that across in an engaging way. So I think that's where I'm going to finish today.
Well, I'll say one thing about pitch slappers. The more of them, the more they make us look so much better as a comparison, right? So if people are typically used to that as a norm and they see something like this, it's a whole different world. So, you know, and I think that's the key, is distinguish, differentiate yourself, and be a good person. You know, it's so cool, these shows, when someone agrees with somebody so many times, is to be agreeable with agreeable people, with people you like agreeing with, you like sharing information, because they value it and they value you. And I think it's that recognition that you can reach out to when it's genuine and authentic, to show people the value. And last thing is, it might be the end of the show, but to Kelly's point, it could be the beginning of an extended relationship, right? A show ends, but the relationship can grow. And if you're interested in what we're doing, who we are, want to get to know us better, we're showing by being here all the time how accessible we are. We're the ones inviting people to the show. We're the ones who are supporting it. So, you know, naturally, the next level of interaction gets even more interesting. So with that said, I want to thank everybody, especially the new people who were invited and showed up today. Tomorrow, we've got Beverly and Dr. Deborah Dupree. Wednesday, we've got Jason Gerardo and Dave Snell. They were a great group before. They're the career transition. Back on Thursday, got Kelly, Harvey, and Don. And we got the anniversary show Friday with me and Kelly, because it'll be 1 year since Kelly started her show. That's the anniversary. And I want to wish Christy Howard a great birthday. I heard Harvey's birthday song. I ran and got Ann and says, "You won't believe it. Frank Sinatra came, you know, okay, too late. How do I know? Anyways, should have stopped at 100 instead of 107. But that makes for a good show, that's for sure. See everybody tomorrow if you can make it. But thank you so much for being here today. Take care. Bye for now.
Oh, we're still live, but Don left. Oh, it's a new week. Gotta love new things. Yeah, we're still live because he has the controls and we don't. And he left the building.
Well, he may be coming back. Is he coming back?
I don't know. I thought he would pop back in by now. So anyways, I guess everybody will see you manana. Ciao.
Bye-bye.